Aloha, and welcome to the latest episode of the Birds Report podcast on A2D Radio. We've got another terrific show for you today. Our guest is one of the directors of the Emmy Award-winning HBO docuseries Hard Knocks, Pat Harris. Quickly before I get to Pat, the last few weeks I've been asking you guys to donate money to the victims of the Maui wildfires. I'd like to do that again. The fires have killed 115 people over there and completely destroyed the village of Lahaina. So my producer, Ralph Dell, will run the donation info on the bottom of the screen, but let me go over it really quickly. You can do it through the Red Cross. Call 1-800-RED-CROSS and make a donation, or text Red Cross and make a $10 donation. Some websites you can go to. The Hawaii Community Foundation has a website, hawaiicommunityfoundation.org/Maui Strong. The Maui Food Bank also has a website that you can donate, mauifoodbank.org/donate. And lastly, the Maui Humane Society also is in need of your help. They've rescued hundreds of dogs since the wildfires, and their shelters are overflowing. So we're asking for you to donate supplies to their cause. You can go to their wish list on Amazon.com, the Maui Humane Society, and donate supplies there. So, as I said, my guest today is Pat Harris, who is one of the directors of Hard Knocks, which airs on HBO and is produced by Pat's company, NFL Films. This is the 18th season of Hard Knocks, which takes us inside a different NFL training camp each summer. This summer's subject has been the NFL's 2023 IT team, the New York Jets, and their quarterback, Aaron Rodgers. The fifth and final episode of Hard Knocks airs next Tuesday night on HBO at 10 o'clock, so be sure to watch that. And be sure to go back and look at if you haven't watched the first 4 episodes. This has been a truly terrific season with the Jets, which we'll talk about when Pat comes on here. So full disclosure, Pat also happens to be my son-in-law and the father of the cutest 2-year-old in the Western Hemisphere. So no apologies there. Anyway, Pat, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Paul. I feel like I should have put Tristan's dad on here. People might know me better as that. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. I know your schedule is very busy, and I appreciate you taking time out to be on it. You have been there since mid-July, I think, 6 weeks.
July 17th.
Wow. This is how many Hard Knocks for you now?
This is my 8th Hard Knocks. I started off with Houston, working out in the field, and then had a little hiatus for the Cowboys for Tristan's birth, and then I've been doing this ever since.
This one's been a little bit unique. I mean, the timing of when the teams are announced varies. I mean, last year it was incredibly early because Detroit put their hand up and said, we want to be in it, which was unusual. I mean, very few teams volunteer. We'll get into that. But this year was different in that nobody volunteered. Nobody wanted to do it. Even the teams that were supposedly unable to say no. I believe it was July 17th when the Jets finally were announced, which was about a week before they started camp.
So I think they started we showed up on Monday the 17th, and they reported that Wednesday. So it was very much by far the quickest we've ever done it. And it was kind of a whirlwind, one of those where we knew we were going to do it at some point. I think we were all just kind of waiting for that official thumbs up and good to go. But it definitely was a little stressful July. Yeah.
Now, when you're able to get a team to announce early, like last year with Detroit, I mean, you and Shannon Furman, the senior director, were able to go to make multiple trips to Detroit, kind of establish a relationship with Dan Campbell, with some other people in the organization. you knew what you could and couldn't do. You knew them pretty well. This was unlike that. You were going in cold. When was the first time you guys met Robert Saleh?
So we met Coach, I believe that Monday that we were there. We pretty much showed up. We had almost like a smaller pool of people, basically to handle all the install of everything, handle all logistics, getting all the crew in. So we met with a smaller group of, Jet security, Jets operations, and introduced ourselves and kind of said we all know this isn't ideal, but we're here. We're going to make it work, and then really hit the ground running. And then we met Coach Saleh, I would say, later that afternoon. It's just an intro. Like I think Shannon got a chance to meet him. And then it was really, it was just figuring out all the logistical stuff that we were able to do in Detroit in other years, as simple as where's our crew going to be housed for basically the entire duration of camp. In Detroit, we were right off the practice field in trailers. For here, I think the way their facility was set up, it's a beautiful facility, but I think space is just at a premium. I think they have their business affairs there as well. So there's a lot of bodies in there. So the conversation of, do we put trailers here? Nothing was really going to work. We ultimately found some office space right behind where their facility is that we were able to rent out like a quadrant of the office space on the first floor. And, we pretty much just walk right around the corner to practice, but little logistics like that we would have had buttoned up, well in advance. We just kind of had to do on the fly and, just make things work. Luckily, everybody between our crew, the Jets were very flexible.
Right. Now, did you guys approach this the way, a team that's getting ready for the playoffs and doesn't know who they're going to play basically has to scout everybody. You guys had it looked like it was going to be 4 teams. The 4 teams that were eligible to do the show were Chicago, the Saints, Washington, and the Jets. When you were preparing storylines, when you were doing that sort of prep work, did you do it on all 4? How did you approach that?
We didn't do it in all 4. I think we probably did it in a lesser extent than we normally would. I think we had conversations, kind of get familiar with the players, who's who. Obviously with the Jets, a lot of it was very self-explanatory once Aaron was introduced and going to their team. But typically we would, amongst the directors and then other producers back at Films, we almost make a research packet, if you will, to just each player, coach, staff people. It's a lookbook. It's to know faces, but also to see what their social medias are like, see if they, what stories have been done on them, what pieces they're like, what they're like in interviews. I think just try to get a sense of personalities. The Lions were great last year. They put together a whole kind of packet for just guys that they knew, some of the personal anecdotes they had for people, which kind of gets you ahead of the game a little bit. Luckily, most of our crew has been doing this for a really long time. So as much as we'd like to have that, it's not a crutch by any means. I think once you're out there, and even normal years, once you're out there and getting to know these guys, some of the, you having 6 bullet points about what his personality is kind of falls by the wayside when you can actually, get to talk to the guy face to face. And so we really just, I guess, approached it with more of an open mind of like, let's just listen and look for whoever, pops out with a personality or a story to tell.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, any impact of you guys getting in there late does not show in the product. This has been a terrific season. The storytelling has been outstanding. The interviews have been, great. We'll get into it, but obviously Aaron Rodgers has been a big part of the success of this year's show, which probably wasn't what anybody was thinking 6 weeks ago, because you didn't know what level of cooperation you were going to get. But this team was clearly, of the 4, the team you guys wanted because of the appeal of Aaron and the quarterback that could take them to the Super Bowl. It's just a great storyline. How long did it take you to figure out? Robert Saleh said some things months ago where he clearly indicated he didn't want to be on the show. So did Aaron after you guys selected them even. And yet you would never know that. The 2 of them have seemed like they wanted to do this show from the very beginning. how did you feel your way along with them? And when did you know they were all in as far as helping you do this?
Well, I think Aaron was easy. I think Aaron, we met Shannon, our head director, and then Kaylee Campen met him Wednesday as soon as they reported. I think obviously we talked to PR and said we wanted to meet him. The kicker that was in our favor was Kaylee has known Aaron basically her entire life. Her dad is James Campen, who was the longtime offensive line coach with Mike McCarthy and the Packers. So she has known Aaron her entire life. He's basically like family to her. So we already had, her relationship there, but Shannon met him. And I think right from the get-go, I think he was open saying, yeah, this isn't my first choice to do it, but we're doing it. Let's do it right. So I think they just had a very honest conversation about, here are our expectations. Are you okay with these? And he's been great ever since. So it was no winning him over, proving X, Y, and Z. I really feel like the trust started and was in a good place from that first relationship. And Coach Saleh was very similar. I think Shannon met him very early. And I think a lot of the reluctance with Hard Knocks is it's almost the things that people aren't aware of. I think once people meet us as human beings, Shannon has been doing this for a number of years and just has a knack for building relationships with people. So I think she's a very honest person, but is very trusting. She cares about this project more than anybody out there. So I think that coaches they're honest people. If you shoot them straight, I think they respect that. So we try to just be as honest as we can with them. And, as much as they didn't want us here, we're uprooting our lives for the most part. So I think we try to convey that to them. Like, we're trying our best to make this work, and we'll, compromise in ways that we can. They know we have a show to do. We're professionals. So I think we just try to convey stuff like that to them as quickly as we can, and just start slowly building up that relationship.
Yeah. I mean, Robert ends up showing up at the announcement of they're going to be on the show wearing a "I Love HK" t-shirt, which is what no one expected as well, I would imagine. Again, now both of them have been mic'd. Tell me the logistics. How many players besides Aaron and how many coaches? How many are mic'd? How long they're mic'd? How that has worked?
Yeah, so I did a little homework because we were kind of kicking this just like at the end of the show. We're kind of recapping everything we've done. So the way it works is we have 8 crews at practice. Typically 5 or 6 of those have an audio person with them and kind of what we call a sync crew. So they'll have a wire. And then at games, that bumps up to typically 11 to 13 cameras. And I would say roughly we've mic'd up between 40 and 50 players over the year. And then coaches, I think we're at maybe 14. Typically it's 8 to 12 people a day. So Aaron's worn a bunch of wires. Coach pretty much wears a wire almost every day at practice. So it's a lot of that, just that trust. We're obviously filming things that they don't want on there. A lot of times it's just personal conversations where it's like, hey, we have no interest in this. So it's them understanding that, we're professionals. I think the biggest confusion a lot of times is that they don't know that we're NFL films. My the old director, Matt Dissinger, used to kind of tell everybody that we all have the same paycheck. We're all, employees of the NFL. So we're not out to, make people look bad. We're not TMZ trying to, catch them slipping up or anything. So I think just building up that trust with the players. And really I think every player has said yes to a wire. Sometimes you get guys each year that might not want to be a part of the show, but really anybody we've talked to has been on board with doing it. And I think a big testament is, even as the shows went on, the star players have bought in, which I think is a big testament to the product that's been out there. And they're still, we're still micing up guys, a lot of those star players as of the last couple practices. So the fact that we've, had them mic'd up 5, 6, 7, 8 times and they're still okay with it, I think just is a big testament to the production itself.
Yeah. I always wondered after Steve Sable, your president and co-founder, passed, how that would work. Because Steve, he had such respect around the league. Coaches and players never said no to him. And when he passed, and I just wasn't sure how people were going to, the trust level, how long it was going to take. And it's fact is, I mean, NFL Films has so many great people working for them that you're right. There doesn't seem to be any question about trust. I mean, when you guys were involved in quarterback with the new Netflix series, Patrick Mahomes, Mariota, and Kirk Cousins are all mic'd for an entire season on that. So, I mean, that kind of shows the willingness of people to in the league to work with you.
No question. I think Dave McGinnis, who was with us when we did the Rams, and Jeff Fisher, and he became like almost a friend of the program. He always tells people when they ask him about Hard Knocks, if you have Shannon and her crew, you'll be fine. I think obviously just knowing us as people and kind of the relationships we're able to build, I think that really helps people along once they hear stuff like that.
Yeah. Now, Robert said when the announcement was made that they had some questions early about conditions, access, that sort of thing, and that got worked out quickly. I mean, what are the do's and don'ts of where you guys have been able to go during training camp? What you can't film? I mean, how has that worked?
So there's really, I guess, the only place we don't film and can't film is the cafeteria. I think that was a rule of Steve's, from my understanding, is that filming guys eat just is something that never. It makes it very uncomfortable for us. But besides that, we really go wherever we need to go. I think we've gotten much better as the show's progressed as filmmakers and storytellers, to say we don't need to be everywhere 24/7. That just creates, you almost feel like a pest, a fly on the wall. I think we want to be strategic about, hey, we want to go in the locker room for this purpose. We want to be in the training room for this reason. I think it helps our crews, stay fresh throughout it. So anywhere we need to go, if when Breece Hall is doing a rehab shoot, we talk to the trainer and say, hey, here's what we're looking to do. And everybody's great with it. So I think that's the one thing that the show has, from start to finish, I think just being more strategic about what we shoot and not just shoot everything, because it gets very overwhelming. And, you're looking at hours and hours of footage that just kind of falls by the wayside. So I think we've tried to be just more strategic about what we're shooting. But everywhere else, I mean, whether it's coach's office, whether it's meeting rooms, team rooms, locker room, practice field, we're anywhere I think we need to be. I think even like the team hotel, we've been there a little bit, as you saw that ping pong scene with Jason and Xavier was there. I know with them traveling to a couple, going down to Spartanburg, that's different, a little bit of a curveball for us, but we'll head to the hotel, and then they have their makeshift meeting rooms and ballrooms and everything there. So we're really, anywhere we need to be, we're able to go, which is a testament to the Jets. Yeah,
the chronicling the rookie battle, the attempts of rookies to make teams has been a staple of Hard Knocks for a long time, and you've done a good job with it this year with the two wide receivers. Well, the three wide receivers. His name escapes me.
Jerome.
Yeah, Jerome. Yeah. That got cut. And those have been great stories that you guys have plugged in just in the right spots.
I think Jason and Xavier were just so unique that they're such friends. I mean, you really see them; they're around each other all the time. It's on TV, it's the big versus little, like all that stuff. Like it was really a perfect scenario for us to cover, and they're two great kids to work with. That kind of just have fun. They're always smiling and good to be around. So I was glad that we were able to, kind of make their story work. And they both had an awesome game to kind of pay it off last week.
Yeah. Now, I think I told you this early on. One of the things that I thought has really made the show has been some of those interviews with Aaron. Early, for a long time, Hard Knocks didn't really do those, did they? I mean, there were no one-on-one interviews with players. It was kind of like you guys chronicling from a distance and putting it together that way, using Liev Schreiber's narration. There wasn't a lot of one-on-one stuff, was there?
So that was, I think, since I started to hear, there's been an ebb and flow of, we started with doing a lot of interviews, then we kind of phased them away just for that, kind of storytelling purpose. And then we brought them back in, and a testament to our DP, Hannah Epstein, this is her first year doing it, and she did a tremendous job with the interview. Look, that was probably day 1 or 2 we were here, a 3-hour process walking around the entire facility, figuring out, okay, here are the potential locations that work. here's exactly, she came in with a plan in place of how she wanted it to look. And I mean, you look at that, especially the indoor bubble, you look at it and you're like, all right, this looks like an indoor bubble. And it's amazing. I think the first time I saw what the interview looked like, all color corrected and everything, and I was like, Hannah, this is incredible. The fact that you made what looks just like a normal bubble really pop and like be so incredible to look at is really just incredible job by her. So, I agree that I think the interviews have been an awesome piece. I think this past week was probably the least amount of narration we've had, definitely in the course of this year. But that's because you have guys like, Zach Azani, you have Randall Cobb, you have Aaron kind of helping tell the story. And I think that gives a good first person perspective, talking about these guys to really make you feel like you're kind of embedded with the team.
Yeah. I mean, the early interviews with Aaron, when you still didn't know what he was about as far as this new adventure for him, and listening to him, I mean, it really enhanced the storytelling, at least in my opinion, because he was candid. He was. I mean, I don't know if he consciously looked at all of this as, I mean, let's face it. Going into the Jets, everybody was starting to think he was really weird, and and I don't know if he said, I need to do a little bit of image assistance, but I mean, this show has done, I think, so much for him PR wise. I mean, not only the fact that he's cooperating with you guys, but what we're seeing of Aaron Rodgers in what you're filming. I mean, him mentoring Zach Wilson. I never expected that. I love the scene last night on the show where he's kneeling. I think it was during the Giants-Jets game. I forget who he was talking to, but one of the younger players was coming by and he said, "Step into my office," so he could have a chat with him, but give him some advice. I mean, it just was a different side of Aaron that I don't think people had appreciated before you guys did this show.
No question. I think we all kind of talked ahead of time. We've had some big stars on the show, and I think he's probably the biggest star we've had. JJ
Right.
Watt eventually got to like that superstar level, but he was still kind of early in his career. So Aaron is and we want to do right by him. We want to showcase him in a way that is genuine. You see, he's obviously an incredible football player, but it's just been awesome to be around him. He's going up, introduce himself to crew members. He walks by and says, "Hey, how's it going? I'm Aaron." And not a lot of quarterbacks do that, let alone future Hall of Fame quarterbacks. So, I got a little starstruck meeting him just because you see his face so much and, grew up watching him. So he's been incredibly genuine. He has fun with it. He has fun, I think, with the cameras being there. And, guys like Vito, the equipment guy, I think just getting him some screen time, like you can tell that he's a veteran. He's seen it all before, but he still has that like kind of youthful energy. And I think a guy like Zach seems to bring that out of him. He has a great time with the team and the younger players and stuff, because they are relatively a young team, minus a few veterans sprinkled in. So it's just a cool dynamic to see, such an older quarterback guy who's been around for so long really mesh with these guys so well.
Yeah, it really has. I mean, when you got there and set up, I mean, ordinarily you kind of have, like, because of the previous meetings you've had with these guys, you're able to kind of develop some storylines even before you get there and know where you want to go. This year, I guess you kind of had to play it by ear as far as and see what the storylines were going to be as you kind of moved along.
Very much so. I think we knew, obviously Aaron makes it. That first episode is really, he kind of stars in it. He hadn't worn a wire for NFL films in a long time. So we really showcased like, hey, here's this guy you haven't seen in a bit. He's sprinkled in different sound bites and everything throughout the years when he played. But really, I think we at least knew enough that the star players with Garrett, with Sauce, with Quinnen, those guys are at least big household names that we say, okay, in any year, even if we have all the research and prep in the world, you want to feature those guys. So I think it started there, but a lot of it's just if you're listening to Quinnen's Wire day one, you're paying attention to the other guys around that defensive line group, especially a group like that that's so close and has so much personality. And you start to be like, oh, this 79 guy, Tanzel Smart, he's making people laugh. He's kind of at the forefront. I think that makes characters so much more memorable and pop so much more when they have a personality.
Yeah.
And we don't have to kind of push the story along ourselves or with Liev. So I think we were conscious of that and listened and looked a lot more than we probably would most years. And sometimes it was taking a flyer on a wire here with this position group, just to like, hey, I saw this one little bite, or he seemed to be making some people laugh. Let's see what we got. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But we definitely had the most open mind we've had since I've started with this.
And you always use or try to use families. You haven't had, because of the fact that there was no, this started, so late you weren't able to do like pieces that you ordinarily do before you even get there with say a wide receivers at home and that sort of thing. But you've mic'd, I think, Randall Cobb's family in the stands. You've done it with Tanzel Smart, and those, you've gotten some good stuff from those. It's been a lot of it's funny. You get the cute kids in there. You get
Yeah, I think we knew. So obviously, like Randall's enough of a name as just a fan of football that we were intrigued by him, and I think a lot of times post practice you'll see families and they'll have a friends and families tent. So I think we started to see his wife and kids pop out there and just playing around, and then make an introduction and get to meet them. And once you figure out, as I can fully attest, you never know if a toddler is going to be able to make it to a game or not. So once we did find out that they were able to go to this past week's game, we're like, yeah, it's awesome. I think we mic'd up. We had one of the sons mic'd up, which again, you never know, micing up a 3-year-old, what they're going to do or how they're going to react. I can assure you Tristan would probably rip it right off. But no, so that's fun. I think we always love finding families. I think it humanizes these guys a lot, to just see what they're like around their kids. They're big, strong football players, but seeing Tanzel Smart pick up his little daughter, I think is the most adorable thing ever. So
yeah, the one thing that's changed for you guys over the last few years with the addition of a 17th game and the change in when the cut down day is, for years the 5th episode was always the cut down, and you'd film GMs and coaches giving them the new, handing in the playbook and them telling them, you did a great job, blah, 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 good luck. Now it's, that used to happen on Saturday. You guys would be on Tuesday, and it was kind of like, even before social media and online where it was so quick, you were able to do that. Now it's different. Cut downs were yesterday. Your next show.
It's been a challenge. I think it's something we're still in the process of figuring out, because every team's been different with what this, I guess, current week they were in, what it looks like for them. Whether it's the Jets are doing 3 pretty full practices. Other teams haven't in the past. Other teams have let the guys have the week off. So it's a challenge. I think it caught us off guard early on. I think now we at least know to plan ahead a little bit and kind of get some things locked in with players. I think it's a great opportunity to kind of, put an end cap on all the different stories we've covered. Some of the star players, like, hey, let's see kind of how they're getting ready for the season, or just, see a little bit more personality. Some of the families that we know, see what they're doing, knowing, fortunately, a lot of these guys have now some downtime and you have a bit of a break before the season really ramps up. But it definitely, like, not having a game in an episode, I think it felt different for those first couple years because of that. And I think now it's the social media world. It's always tricky because the guys that become stars in Hard Knocks, typically somebody who is tweeting that whether they made the team or they didn't. So my mom was texting me last night if X, Y, and Z made it. I was like, you got to wait till show 5. Like you almost don't want any spoilers as much as you could. And if you're tuned into the NFL world, you'll probably see it. But I think for the average fan or people that can avoid the social media world for a bit, I think it makes it more genuine to feel an emotion when you find out if a guy made it or not.
Yeah. That first show, you trotted out Liev Schreiber for the first time I mean, Liev's been doing, I don't know, Liev or Liev, I don't know how he pronounces it.
Yeah.
He's been narrating for you guys since 2001, the first season. How did that come about? I love the reaction of a lot of the players there. A couple of them seem to get him confused with John Facenda, calling him the voice of God, but it was same concept. But how did that come about?
I think it started with Aaron. I think he's mentioned, I believe at the golf tournament he was at, that he's just a huge fan and everything. And I think HBO was like, oh, this is like, that's pretty awesome. I think from what I heard, they've tried in the past, and Liev was just kind of reluctant, saying it doesn't really fit, a reason that I'd be out there and really break that fourth wall. So I think the fact that Aaron was such a fan, and I think he is a Jets fan, that's probably the biggest reason, that it really made sense from so many different avenues. And it helped that I think it lives in the Hamptons, so he's relatively close by. So all in all, I think it was just a perfect storm, and he seemed very excited. He was awesome to work with, very much just chill, and just was sitting in a golf cart talking with our crew. And I think the coolest thing I found out after the fact was he told our DP that he was as excited, I think, to meet Aaron as he was the crew members, knowing he's been filming this forever and he's seen our work from afar. And obviously he knows movies and productions, but I think he said he was just enjoyed watching us work. He was out of practice, and he's watching them play, but he's also, I think, paying attention to the crews that are running around and doing everything. So I thought that was really cool, and did not expect that from him, that he was truly excited to just see how we operate.
Yeah. I mean, I've listened to him do Hard Knocks since 2001. And when I watched Ray Donovan, and no, it's not the same guy. I mean, come on, nobody. I mean, the voice doesn't. You just can't believe it is the same guy. He just changes his voice completely to do narration for you guys.
He sounds a little different in person when you hear him talk. It's like if you didn't know it, it might take you a second, and obviously once he was there and you hear him, but it is a little different in person. That kind of threw me off at first.
Yeah. Now like we talked earlier, you've been there for 6 weeks, 6+ weeks, 12, 14-hour days. How big is your crew there?
We have about 35 people here.
Take us through a typical practice day. How you guys operate as far as from getting up in the morning till going to bed at night.
Yeah, so we typically, every camp is obviously different. For them, they had practice in the morning, so pretty much our days would start we'd have a 7 a.m. production meeting. That would be all of our crew together. It's it's for camera and audio people. It's getting their gear and stuff prepped for the day. For us directors, it's all right, what's our day look like? Who's mic'd up? What shoots do we have? What meetings are we in? All that stuff. So we have a daily schedule. We'll kind of run that down in the production meeting. Fill anybody in on anything else, upcoming in the week, all that stuff. And then typically they had meetings, offense, defense meeting, team meeting kind of before practice. And then practice was roughly around like 10:30 to 12:30. So we'd go and film that. The way it works most of the times is that 12:30 practice ends, and then all the stuff on the field, the extra work and stuff, being in the locker room, that kind of trickles into, call it 1:30. Then we'll typically have a couple crews filming press conferences that happen after the fact. We like to just cover those, obviously, as they help as we're telling stories. Players will typically they have a lift and a bit of a break, and then really meetings go right from about 4 to 6:30, and then they'd have a walkthrough from 6 to 7. So really you're looking at, for majority of our crew, we'd show up at 7 o'clock in the morning, and then the walkthrough ends about 7. So you're not probably getting out of there until about 7:30. You have some downtime throughout the day. I think whether it's to just rest, turn off your brain for a second, half hour here and there, which is nice. For us directors, a lot of times it's planning ahead. That's the biggest thing, I think, with these productions, is you try to live in the day, but you can't rely on just reacting to what happens. You have to anticipate and prep for stuff, whether it's shoots or anything. So a lot of meetings, a lot of discussions and stuff like that. I think one of my favorite things is we have a ping pong table in there, so we can burn some steam playing a little ping pong. It's fun to dust that off a little bit. But yeah, really our day it's a 12+ hour day, pretty much every day. So it's a grind. I think we all love that it's a family atmosphere. We're all in it together. So we have a lot of fun. And, there's certain people that I only see on this project throughout the year. I see them for 6 weeks, which is great. And then I'll be like, all right, I'll see you guys next year. So we make it work.
I remember talking to Shannon last year for a story I did on Hard Knocks. And she said, I mean, because Detroit was so cooperative and so enthusiastic, that she mentioned that you probably had twice the footage to send back to films that you had from the year before with Dallas. I'm curious, how does this year stack up with that?
It's probably more of a normal year. I think we have a little bit more practice footage. Detroit, I think because we had so many cameras just everywhere, we had a ton of robotics footage and everything. So that was definitely a bigger lift. I think this is more of a normal year. And I think as we found, it's as much as we love shooting it, I also know the other side where there's a whole team of about probably another 30 or so producers that have to log, subclip. We basically label everything so nothing gets lost, but they have to, on the flip side, go through all that. So I think we realized with Detroit, like it might have been a little too much, and we didn't need all of that, just because it's just such a grind, I think, to then get through on the other side and then take an extra time to log it. That gives you less time to edit and put the show together. So I think there is a happy medium that we've found this year. And, I think we've done a great job of really using majority of the stuff that we've shot. So I know there's a lot of practice footage and stuff that falls by the wayside, but for us, it's like the off the fields, the additional things we're shooting. We're pretty successful with shooting those and getting them into the show.
How many producers and editors do you have back in Mount Laurel at NFL Films that are working strictly on this stuff?
I would say my best guess is I think it's around 30-ish people. And then there's a whole team of people on the post-production side. You're looking at probably 50 or 60 total people, everybody, all the audio mixers, all the color correctors, all the editors and stuff that put it together. It's really an army, especially with a quick turnaround show like this. We live in the world sometimes. We have, weeks and months, like with the quarterback show, we had tons of time to finalize everything. This is really, you got to go and be ready to work, and they're working long hours there as well. So it's definitely a grind to get the show out each week.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how this is so different than most of the stuff Films produces because of the immediacy of having the turnaround. I know it's kind of like the difference for me as a writer from doing a long-term project that's not due and doesn't have to be out quickly. You can take your time with it, and a piece that has to be done right away because of breaking news. I think
there's a different vibe to it that sometimes it's nice that you have to live in the moment and you cut, the game, for example, the games are playing at Saturday at, I think the latest one was 7 p.m. 7 p.m. They're probably not getting all the footage until 11, 12, and then they're working either through the night or very early the next morning. And you just have to think, all right, what needs to be in the show? And sometimes when you have all that extra time, you start second guessing, you start, version 1 turns into version 10 because you're just making tiny tweaks, and you'd think that it gets better. Sometimes it doesn't get better with all that extra time. So very much living in the moment. I think, I know some producers really love it, but that's just kind of what we accepting what we kind of have to do.
Now your deadline, I remember Shannon mentioning last year that the regular deadline is like Saturday at 10 p.m. Is that right? Is that when you guys have to have everything? Yeah,
that's
films?
Typically where we'll cut it off. Obviously, in today's world, with we can get the footage back fairly quick. If there's a one-off shot or something that they need, or something happens, a breaking news happens, we have the ability to get it in. It's challenging, but that's usually where we cut it off. If it's a normal week and everything, that's typically where we'll stop things.
Is there a drop? I mean, let's say something important. You've been doing this for a while. I remember some shows where Antonio Brown, I can't remember if he was suspended, didn't show, left camp. Something like that where you're want to try to get it in that week if you can. What's the drop? How does that work? What's the drop dead time on that?
Antonio Brown was that moment. And I don't remember if it was he'd been out for a bit and then he showed up to a practice, and I don't remember if it was Tuesday morning or Monday. Knowing it being on the West Coast, I'm going to lean that it was Monday. But we were able to get basically the card and the footage of him showing up to practice, saying what's up to all the guys. And we immediately take that card, give it to, we have what we call a VTN that takes the footage. They feed it back to films. They ingest it. We started that process. So I don't remember exactly if it was Monday or Tuesday, but with a very small batch of footage like that, you have that ability to do it on Monday night. If you need to get in just a couple shots, I think that's definitely something we've done, but you obviously don't want to do that too much because it's a fire drill to get it done.
Yeah. Now you guys have, over the last few years, have done a terrific job with the music, which has become, it's never been when Steve was alive, Steve had a different idea of how to incorporate music into films as projects. This has been interesting, and it's been. I like that New York song last night. I'm going to be, it was a unique version I had never heard before by someone I had never heard of, but it was terrific. How has the music picked for when you're putting this together?
So it's really a full team effort. I think they almost create like a pool of songs ahead of time for producers to kind of work with. There's a whole different world. We have a whole music department between composers, and we have all the in-house music, but then basically licensing, outside music. We have a whole department that handles that. So they'll present a lot of songs. If, I think last year with Detroit, it was all right. Detroit obviously has a big music history. So, all right, here are certain songs we might want to clear, trying to get out ahead of that. That was where having that additional time really helped to clear some of, the Motown music, the Eminem music, all that stuff. So it's really a full team effort. With some of the newer stuff, you'll tap into interns or just people with as much of a musical culture and just different group of people as we can to just really sprinkle in different stuff. The different versions of songs, I don't know how that is. I think a lot of it could be, hey, we want this song. A lot of times it's really hard to clear the songs, but there's different covers of it. And a lot of times the covers sound really cool. So it makes it a lot easier to clear that music, because that's obviously a challenge, especially as time has progressed and, the social media world and rights and everything has become much more murky. But it's really a full team of producers, the music department. We'll have contributions here. If, with Sexy Red, I'm sure you're a big fan of Sexy Red with the Ski song that they played. But that was really, we listened to, the players played it all the time. And we're like, all right, well, I think we're always open. Like, hey, if you guys have a song, or talk to the players if there's music they like and we can clear it, I think it's really cool. It makes it unique to the team. So that was not one we knew coming in, and made it work. And it's a cool segment. It's very much reflective of the Jets and kind of how camp has been. That song is played pretty much every day. So,
yeah. You're dealing with players, a lot of them who are getting cut. It requires obviously a level of sensitivity, especially when you've got a camera in your hands. How do you guys approach that? It's different because in the past, and I don't know when it started, the team started cutting off, and I thought it was kind of good that they did, because I kind of, in my opinion, was getting old when you guys would have the camera there and player after player would walk into the GM or coach's office, and it would be the same routine, and then you guys would talk to them later. It got a little bit repetitive. I like it. That's why I kind of like that. I know it's harder for you guys, but I like the fact now that we don't see as much of that. But how do you approach these guys, knowing you're dealing with a guy that just, his livelihood might have just ended?
I think it comes back to the relationships we've built with them. I think we just try to be as sympathetic as possible. It's, for as much as it is a very tough day for the teams, it becomes a tough day for us. These are people we've got to know over the course of a few weeks. So you always kind of secretly want them to all make the team, and we understand that they can't. So I think we try to humanize as best we can. We don't need to have that camera as they're cleaning out the locker, filming them for all 8 minutes that they do it. I think it comes back to us knowing kind of what we need as we're filming and thinking as creatively as possible. Like, all right, here's 5 shots that I know I'm going to need for this scene, and just trying to get it and get out and give these guys as much space as we can. I think we try to talk to them before we film, and if they're comfortable with us even filming. I don't think we want to feel like we're just all up in their space and without making sure that they're okay with that. Some guys aren't. Some guys are like, this is a lot. I think as the younger generation comes in, they understand that we have a job to do and are respectful of that. But it's some guys you aren't going to be right next to and getting an interview after the fact. It might just be a shot or two to just, kind of to capture that scene that way. But I think we've learned over the years that as hard as it is, I think it has helped. I think Jason Kabinda was one that Shannon has a relationship with that basically said showing my, has my story almost had an end to it. He's like, if you guys really didn't follow up with me and kind of show me getting released and talking to me after, you see me throughout an entire camp, and then all of a sudden I just end. You see me, carrying a bag out, but getting a chance to kind of see, I believe it was Coach Paul Gunther talking to him, saying you had an incredible camp, like really giving a genuine moment. And these coaches aren't actors. We're not convincing them to do this stuff, but trying to capture those moments, I think, really helps humanize the whole thing. It helps put a positive spin on it. So that's what we've tried to lean to a little bit more. But it's tough nonetheless. Those are days we definitely dread as much as the teams do.
I'm curious what it's like for you after 6 weeks of being so close and being around these guys for day and night. I mean, you're a big Bills fan, obviously. They probably won't let you do a Bills show if the Bills ever. Just joking. But I mean, when the show, when you, like next week when you leave, what's it like for you to walk away from the project and walk away from dealing with this group of people for for 6 weeks, both your fellow employees and the players and coaches you've been dealing with?
You become a fan. I mean, there's no way around it. You get to know these guys, you get to know them as people. You can't help but root for them. That you want to see them well. I mean, going to Lions games and paying attention, you're always paying attention to how they're doing. You might in your fantasy league want to take, hey, I loved working with this guy, like I want him on my team. So I think it's impossible to just say, yep, it's a job and I'm done and we'll move on to the next. Like we're humans, they're people. A lot of these relationships continue, once we leave and once we're done, that whether it's throughout the course of the season, a couple seasons from now, they go to a different team, we're going to see these guys again. We'll do a top 100 interview and one of us directors will probably come up because we know these guys and you almost want to, not they're friends, but they're coworkers in a way. So you want to see them, see how they're doing. So it's you definitely want to root for them and have a successful season. Cause I think even for the show, I think it's just a great thing for the show to really see like, hey, we showed exactly what transpired on the field. I think we want that as much as we can. Yeah.
Maybe with any luck, some other teams are watching it and saying, it's not that bad. We'll do it next year.
That's always our hope. I think we try. Hopefully, I think Aaron is kind of said that. I think there's a lot of preconceived notions on Hard Knocks, and it's portrayed in a certain way. And he's like, it just hasn't been like that. I think Coach Ulbrich, the defensive coordinator, was talking to Shannon today, and I think every coach comes in with there's a concern of we're going to be invasive and leaking stuff and it just things getting out that they don't want, and it's just an overwhelming process. And I really feel like everybody kind of says by the end of it, we blend in, we aren't making their lives any more difficult. We're just truly documenting what's happening. They're having a meeting and talking to the team and saying X, Y, and Z. We just put a microphone on and we just have a camera off to the side and let you do your thing. We're not pushing storylines or anything like that with them. So we really just try to document it the best we can. And I think that gets a lot of respect from them, and hopefully word of mouth helps with this. That's what we always want, but it's easier said than done.
I remember you telling me. For people that don't realize it, you guys also do an in-season Hard Knocks version, All or Nothing, with a team. And I remember the year Arizona's been on multiple times, but I think you had done them for Hard Knocks, then did them for All or Nothing, and your footprint was so light. You spent an entire season with them, and at the end, like somebody, I don't know if it was a player or a coach, was like, "Hey," at the end of when he saw you guys in the locker room at the end of the towards the end of the season, said, "What are you guys doing here?" He didn't realize he had never left.
Yeah, that was the Rams. I was a part of that team with Jeff Fisher that we stayed there at camp and then stayed there all throughout the season. And yeah, it's interesting who pays attention, whether it's players, staff, media outside. Like we all think they're like, okay, everybody clearly knows what's happening here, but surprisingly, we were able to kind of blend in pretty well. That was a grueling. It was a tough year. I think they lost 11 of their last 12, which that's a rough one to document and be around those players. But again, it comes back to those relationships that we've built good enough ones with players as time went on. The Alec Ogletrees of the world and Robert Quinns and Will Hayes, they liked us enough as people to keep participating in the show, which definitely saved us.
Yeah. Pat, I can't thank you enough for spending time with me today to talk about Hard Knocks. I know you've got a busy schedule and a lot to do, so I'm going to let you go. Give my love to your dear wife and lovely son, Tristan. And I want to give a big shout out to your mom and dad back in Rochester and all the people that are boosting the ratings for this podcast today. So
I've seen a few of my friends pop up with comments. So hi, guys.
So you take care of yourself, and I'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. I appreciate you having me.
We've got a few minutes here. I want to talk a little bit about the Eagles roster cuts and their practice squad signings today. I don't know how many people saw the signings. Basically, it's people you expected, guys that got cut that they wanted to bring back. Greg Ward's back, Britton Covey's back, Devin Allen. So, those 4 wide receivers that they only had on the roster, now they've got some options. They signed tight end Brady Russell to the practice squad. A few other guys, pretty much all of them. Taron Jackson, the defensive end, all are guys that were in camp with them. I think there was just one name that I did not that was not with them in camp, and as a cornerback, Tywan Mullen, who was with the Chargers this summer. That's why when you looked at their 53-man roster yesterday, it looked different. 7 defensive tackles, which is probably 2 more than they're going to have on their season opening, their week 1 46-man roster. They were carrying 7 cornerbacks. Typically, teams on their 53 have 4, maybe 5. They were not offensive linemen. They only had 9. Most teams have 10, and they had no punter or punt returner. The punter. I mean, they need a new punter, although they may sign Aaron Sippis to the practice squad. But I mean, they know they can get one from somebody else is going to cut one. The Chargers, I think, probably have the best punter that got cut. I can't remember his name, but there's plenty of options out there. Punt returner, same thing. Could be a guy they already have. It could be Greg Ward if they want somebody with sure hands. It's not going to fumble, but is also not going to have any big returns and can help them as a receiver. They may use Greg Ward. The flexibility of the practice squad. Howie mentioned yesterday when he talked to the media that they view it as a 69-man roster, and that's pretty much the way it is now. The NFL after COVID expanded practice squads to 16 players. 6 of them can have unlimited experience in the league. You can bring guys back and forth from the practice squad to the 53-man and put them back on practice squad. You can do that 3 times during the season. So you've got a lot of flexibility. Your guys on practice squad are essentially guys you can use at a moment's notice. You activate them on Saturday. They don't have to clear waivers. And I forgot to give the agree to disagree question. It's a little late in the show to do that, but I will. The Eagles last year started out 8-0. They did not lose until they were upset in week 10 after the bye to Washington, of all teams, 32-21. My listeners, my viewers may remember that game, the 4 turnovers in that game. That was the game when Washington controlled the clock for 40 minutes. So that was their first loss. And my question today, my agree to disagree question, is their first loss this year will not be until they go 9-0 and lose to Kansas City in Week 11, also after the bye. Agree or disagree? I'm going to say agree. I think it's possible. They've got some games early that they can lose, certainly, and you could start with New England, although I don't see that happening. New England is incapable. They have a great defense, but they're incapable of scoring points. Minnesota, they're going to be playing them on a short week, but they're a team that won 11 games last year by 7 points or less. I mean, they're not as good as their record was, 13-4 last year. So I don't, but there are teams that they can lose to. They can lose to the Rams when they go on the road and play them out at the LA Coliseum or out at their new stadium in SoFi. They play the Jets week 6, which is going to be, they play that one up at the Meadowlands, and that'll be a challenging game. But and they play Dallas, but in Dallas at home week 9. I just think they are not going to lose until after the bye, when they play Kansas City. I think the Chiefs will be their first loss. Now, a lot can affect that. Mostly injuries. Right now they're pretty healthy. So is every other team in the league because of how little contact there is in training camps these days. But I think I think that'll be their first loss, and then that's that. I mean, they have a tough schedule, but that's when it gets tough. Kansas City, Buffalo, San Francisco, at Dallas, at Seattle. Those 5 games will define their season as far as winning whether they end up as the top seed in the NFC or not. So, my guess is that that they'll somehow manage to win these first 9 games. The bigged challenge for a team coming off a Super Bowl appearance, and I've said this on other shows and said it before, is, because they're on paper, they're the best team in the NFC right now. But from talking to people that have gone through it, the toughest part is the step-by-step process again. When you're a team that's either won or lost a Super Bowl, the next year you just want to snap your fingers and be back in the playoffs and take it from there. Unfortunately, that's not the way it works. You've got to play 17 games. You've got to go week to week. And that usually, that teams that the week, they've got a target on their back. The week before, the year before, that wasn't the case. So they've got to worry about they've got to worry about teams targeting them. They've got to worry about doing the small things they did the year before to get to the Super Bowl, doing them again. Sometimes, when you've got to repeat, you aren't as thorough. You make mistakes. Last year, until they lost that Washington game and turned the ball over 4 times, I mean, they had the numbers. I might not be exact on this, but I want to say they had a plus 15 turnover differential in those first 8 wins when they went 8-0. That's hard to do 2 years in a row. It's hard to be as healthy as they were last year when their offensive line had just 2 missed games by starters the entire season. So, that things like that kind of rear their ugly head when you have to start from scratch and do it again. But this team certainly has the talent to do it. They've got leaders that aren't going to let them look ahead. So we'll see. That roster is just awfully good. I thought their defense was going to get weakened by free agency. It didn't. They've replaced parts with young people like Sidney Brown and Reed Blankenship at safety, and I mean they're just a very good team on both sides of the ball. They've got depth, so I don't think there's any real weakness there. It's just a matter of doing the little things week in and week out until they get to the tough part of their schedule. Well, that's our show for Wednesday, August 30th. I want to thank Pat Harris for giving us a glimpse inside Hard Knocks. I'd also like to thank my producer, Ralph Dell, for his invaluable assistance once again. Our guest next week will be my longtime friend, the always informative, always entertaining Brian Baldinger from the NFL Network. So we'll tune in. Until then, aloha.